In a world where change is the only constant, Choumil stands at the forefront, guiding title professionals to not just grow their businesses, but to master the art of innovation. With every episode, you're handed the keys to unlock unparalleled growth and stay ahead of the curve. Get ready for a transformative journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Title Agents Podcast, where we bring you expert insights to stay ahead in the ever-evolving title industry. I am your host, Choumil, Alltech National Title CEO, and today we're diving into the crucial world of IT and cybersecurity with Genady Vishnevetsky, an expert from Stewart Title. As cyber threats grow more sophisticated, protecting sensitive client information has never been more important. Get ready for a deep dive into best practices, emerging trends, and actionable strategies to keep your business secure. Welcome, Genady.
Thank you for having me.
To start off, please give us a little background about your business career and education, all that fun stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I'm leading cybersecurity at Stewart Title, Stewart Information Services Corporation. I've been here for over 9 years now, and in this role of security leader, I've been in this role for over 20 years. My previous two endeavors were in the financial services. I worked for two payment processors in a similar role. So title insurance was new to me, but at the end of the day, I think information technology and the security crosses many boundaries. There are some caveats and differences, depends on the industry, but for the majority of companies, basic security principles are the same.
That's awesome. Well, the reason I reached out to you to get you in the podcast is I follow your posts at Alta Open Forum. If you're not subscribing to Alta Open Forum, you should. It's really some amazing information. And Genady, whenever every maybe a few weeks, you post something very scary, like about all the threats that are out there. And these are real. They're not fictitious. I mean, it's just it's really amazing how the bad actors keep innovating.
Yeah, thank you for promotion, Lois. This is actually weekly. I do a weekly post unless I'm on vacation or traveling. I try to stick to the cadence. It's on Friday around 8 a.m. Central Time. And as Moa says, these are things that are happening within last week or two. So this is not something that happens 5 years ago, 3 months ago. And I try to make it non-technical. It always will have some best practices. And I try to kind of make it resonating, but explain to my audience, which is title agents, what's the dynamics of the cyber world? What are the new tactics and techniques bad guys are using to attack us?
Awesome. Can you give us an overview of the current cybersecurity landscape and particularly how it impacts the title industry?
Sure. I'm sure everybody have known and heard of generative AI. It's been around since the last year, where it made its strides, and it changes every industry to different degrees. It enters our industry as well. Primarily, it's generative AI. It's a ChatGPT. Many companies and agents are looking, how do they use the technology to optimize and make their workday easier and efficient? There's a lot of companies, including Microsoft and Google, to introduce the copilots. Copilot is a term of generative AI that kind of drives the questions and answers and allow to look at the data and kind of summarize it. I think the most common use today is the meeting summarizations, document summarizations. But many large underwriters and companies start looking into how can we use the AI internally to aggregate our data, to ask the questions and let the data kind of lead us to the answer. Cloud exposure over the last 4 or 5 years, we're moving from traditional office. Remember that server sits in your closet for the last 25 years. We're taking these servers now and moving them to a cloud. Cloud compute and storage becomes cheaper every day. That comes with its own risks and threats, because remember, in cloud, everything is a program, everything is a software. In your closet, in your data center, you have physical devices that actually connect with the cables and the wires to each other, and to the degree serve as a protecting mechanism. It's all software driven in the cloud, so you need to be aware of that exposure. And then we see a lot of small company come into the market, specifically in our industry, to connect these dots. As our tools moving into the clouds, and as we embrace any new tools to optimize and make our process efficient, this vendors are producing point solutions that kind of connect the dots. It connects the technologies that haven't connected before, and able to get the data extracted from one tools or one technology and move it to another technology, and then provide a different feedback. So that comes with its own risk, because now you're taking your data and kind of passing it along to your vendor. So the vendor risk management becomes essential part of it. And then lastly, your data is everywhere. So you have to be aware of that. So this is from an attacker perspective. They use it in social engineering. I'm sure we'll talk about further down on about threats, etc. But just be aware that your data is everywhere, and you need to safeguard it.
Okay. So I know, like, I think it's this day and age, it's almost I wouldn't say impossible. It's very difficult to still host your own network, like, locally. To keep up with all the patches and all the updates. And for those that still have the hosting their data locally, I hope they move to. I mean, we're almost forced to move to the clouds. I don't think it's an option anymore. So what advice do you give to people that still kind of have local networks?
Start shifting to the cloud. It's inevitable.
For better or worse, right?
Say it again.
So for better or worse, you have to move to the clouds.
Yes.
Yes.
So before, it was hard, it was expensive, it was complex. Think about the business continuity. That's a server that sits in the closet in your office doesn't have a continuity for it. Doesn't have you may or may not have a backups. It definitely sits in one location. So if that location, if you don't have a network or power is out in that location. We just recently survived Hurricane Beryl here in Houston. Some of us were without the electricity for a couple of weeks. So how do you get access to that data? Well, cloud provides that redundancy. Cloud provides that resilience at the lower cost that you would build it. So start thinking about it. We used to have a mail server sitting in our closets. Now the Microsoft 365, Google Suite, all of these solutions are cheaper. They're more affordable. They have a better security. They're just better overall.
What are some of the most common cybersecurity threats that title companies face today, and how can they protect themselves against these risks?
Believe it or not, they haven't changed in the last 5 to 10 years. So phishing they change a little bit. So phishing and social engineering is still number one attack vectors in our industry. What has changed slightly is we start seeing attacks using smishing. That's the SMS-based phishing email. Those are extremely dangerous, and let me tell you why. Because traditionally, these are using what's known as a URL shortener. So when you receive the text message and it has a link, remember that long link that you see in your web browser, usually when you click on something, that gets shortened using these different tools called URL shorteners, and it's small. And the problem with it is until you actually click on it, you don't know where you can land it, where you land it. You can no longer eyeball it and say, oh yeah, I'm going where it's supposed to go. That's why they become dangerous. Caller ID spoofing, we've seen for the last several years, we've seen pretty sophisticated attacks where adversaries will actually send an email followed by a text message to an escrow officer followed by a phone call. And they were portraying to be from a bank or a lenders, etc. So it's very easy. Those tools are readily available for phone spoofing. They've been available for decades, but not as widely as popular as it is right now. Some will go as low as $20 a month. You can pay $20 a month to have full access to the to anonymization caller ID spoofing technology. Password attacks and breaches. Even in the last 3 months, literally in the last probably months and a half, we've seen two major breaches. One is a national public data, 2.9 billion unique records. Now, it's not to 2.9 individuals; it's unique records, but that includes the data. This is a company that housed the data for a background check. This is your knowledge base answers to the questions that LexisNexis collects and answers, actually. These are the social security and privacy data. This is your education, your birth certificate, etc. Anything you ever provided for a background check was in that database. 2.9 billion records. RockU 2024 passwords. It's funny how this breaches now collate the data. They take the data from different breaches, they collate it into the one large database and sell it with a year. And every year they gather more data. So this RockU started in 2019, and now it's 2024, has 10 billion passwords, username and the passwords. So these passwords are used in phishing attacks, and they're also used in what is called password spray attacks. When the adversary takes these passwords, plug it into a tools, and they just slow attack against your bank account, against your insurance, against your corporate account, against your email, against every account to see where it meets. So lately, we've seen attack on the service desk or your IT for a password reset. This is new. Relatively new, and they also use one of the attacks that's more sophisticated, but we start seeing in our industry as well, is the SMS swapping. That's a technique when attackers call the telephone company, portray to be a legitimate user, saying, hey, I'm on vacation in XYZ country, I lost my phone, I just bought my new phone, and I need to port the SIM card into this phone. And they just answer basic knowledge-based answers that now readily available from the NPD breach, and they can bypass your phone security service desk and get the password reset. And then for larger companies and larger underwriters, we see an attacks for the elevated privileges. So attackers know from your link profiles, from your public appearance, from social media, from all these different resources, they know who you are. So they are targeting people who have an IT or security in a title, or administrator, or engineer, or a developer, because they know they will have elevated privileges to the corporate network. So they're targeting those.
What are the key cybersecurity best practices that every title company should implement to safeguard their operations?
First and foremost, know your inventory. You can't secure what you don't know exists. So that's my first recommendation to any title agent. And you need it in the incident triage. And don't limit your inventory to a computer and that server in the closet that you still have. So take at the big pictures. Look at every SaaS, which is a software as a service. Do you use a CRM? Is it Salesforce? Is it something else? Maybe for a smaller agent, it's still a CRM. It's probably a cloud solution. Do you use any financial system? Maybe a QuickBooks for a smaller agent. So these are rely on something that you're accessing maybe daily, weekly, or monthly, but you don't think about it every day, because when you come to the office, you just see your servers, your laptops, your monitors. Look bigger. What are your backup? Who are your key partners? Who are your key vendors? Where do you store your contacts? Where is your contact list? Is it on that server? Because if that server is encrypted and you don't have a backup of that contact list, how are you going to contact? Number two, MFA everywhere, multi-factor authentication everywhere. I don't care. You can start slow, but you need to, every single account that supports, which is pretty much every account under the sun nowadays, you have to set up the MFA, because 10 billion passwords in the raw Q 2024 password breach, 10 billion. So you can imagine all your passwords you've used are in that breach. And guess what? You could have shopped, if you're reusing the password, you could have shopped at some small website vendors. I don't know, you're buying flowers or cookies. I mean, when that website is breached and all the credentials are stolen and made it to the dark web for reseller, they don't have to file with the SEC. They don't have to inform regulators. You probably will never know. So reusing passwords is pretty bad, but also the passwords that were leaked, the amount of passwords that were leaked in the last couple of years is just enormous. So MFA everywhere. Invest in security awareness. That's the key. This is how you keep and educate your employees. Make sure it doesn't matter. It could be steer them into the Alta community to read my blogs, or just write something, once a week or once a month. Provide them a formal training, etc. Security very important. And from technology investment, I would invest into two technologies. One is email and one is a web security technology. Those are help you tremendously because if you think about it, outside of the social engineering, your only two connections or exposure to the internet where you can get infected is your email and your web browser. So if you can put the layers of security, additional layers of security to both of these channels, you reduce your risk significantly.
That's great. Can you touch a little bit on social engineering, make sure our listeners understand what that means? And that's probably the most incidents for title agencies through social engineering, not really infiltrating our systems.
That would be accurate, yes. So the social engineering is a technique where the adversary provides or steers you to do something that you didn't intend it to do. And then normally they will support this or drive this with a context that resonates with you. For example, if I send you an email and saying Mo, have you watched? I saw you at the last night at the football game at the local field, etc. Well, you don't go into football if you're not even a fan of football. You probably will dismiss it. But now, if I tell you, if I connected to you over social media, or somehow get an access to your social media feeds and know your love of baseball, and you have two kids, and your kids were playing the baseball last Friday night for a local tournament, etc. If I provide you in my contacts this information, hey Mo, it was great to see you at the football games. Your kids so great at the baseball. So I'm giving you now context you immediately will respond to because it resonates with you. That's basically a tactics that the social engineers are using. One of the most common tactics is a sense of urgency, and that's important to understand because in our business, it's all about the closing. Closing cannot move. Closing has to go on, and the adversary knows this, so they monitor all these transactions up to the last minute of the closing. And most of their attacks are coming in 48 to 24 hours before closing.
In our business, protecting clients' data is very crucial, as you know. What steps can title companies take to ensure that sensitive information remains secure throughout transaction process?
You need to make sure you encrypt the data at rest and in motion. So what that means is the data you store on the server or in the cloud needs to be encrypted at rest. And there are multiple ways to do this. This is not a technical podcast, so I'm not going to go through the details, but your IT staff will know how to do this. And you also need to protect the data that moves either from you to anywhere else or from anywhere else to you. That today, in 99% of the cases, are protected through the web TLS or SSL encryption or security. But you need to make sure that your data is encrypted at rest in motion, because all of the regulators and all the compliance standards requires us to do that. So not doing that, you're increasing your chances to be penalized if you are in a security incident. Number two, don't store the data you don't need for any regulatory or business requirements. We tend to store our data infinitely. The prior files is a key for us. For any transactions, we want to go to our prior files and look at the history of that property and history of that files. But just distill, because most of the prior files don't have any sensitive data. Don't take all the data, just distill it only to the data you need and try to store your data to the minimum. And then also we talk about the vendors and how our ecosystem is growing. You need to understand your vendors and partners ecosystem. What data is going where, and how does your partner and vendor protect your data? Because remember, you're still liable. If this is your data and it's leaked, and all of a sudden bank comes to you and saying you lost the data of our customers, they're not going to be interested in your excuse that it was lost by your partner. So make sure your partner's agreements, your MSAs, and other contractual obligations with your partner you're exchanging the data with, they're meeting your standards, your data retention, not theirs. And then lastly, use email encryption and safe data exchange for communicating with your clients, with your customers, etc. Our customers' generation is getting younger. They're a little bit more tech savvy, so we start seeing our customers asking the questions. Well, are you encrypting the data you're going to send to me in communications? So they're a little bit more acute to technology. And they're asking for all of this safety and security, because this is non-repudiation for you. If you can definitively say that I send this sensitive document over encrypted channels and you have a proof of this, you're better protected.
Yeah, I think that email encryption, that should be it's not even a question. That should be automatic at this day and age, and especially it's little, not expensive, is inexpensive to add encryption to Microsoft 365, like a few dollars per user. Kind of, it's worth that expense.
Right. That's another reason to move. If you still have a mail server in your closet, to move into modern cloud-based solutions like Microsoft or Google.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right.
Now we move to employee training. Human error is often a significant risk factor in cybersecurity. How important is employee training, and what should be included in the cybersecurity training program for title professionals?
That's a good question. So my first recommendation, don't penalize your users. The carrot and stick kind of approach is no longer working. Everybody makes mistakes, so you need to embrace the good behavior and correct the bad behavior. So entice users to perform well and understands the good behavior and what the security. So educate them what the phishing emails looks like. Do a periodic testing, but also don't penalize them if they fail. Again, explain where they fail. And move on. As a matter of fact,
to be an opportunity for further training, like when people fail.
Right. Yeah. But here's an interesting shift. So I start seeing shift from so what traditionally used to be a CBT-based training, it's computer-based training. We're all accustomed to it. You sit in 30 or 45 minutes staring at the screen of somebody playing the roles and videos of security awareness training. That doesn't work anymore. Because while we think that the employees are watching that video, they're actually multitasking. They're doing something on another screen.
And a cell phone.
So that doesn't fit.
That's it.
I can also tell you that not two employees are equal, and there are some predispositions to be more sensitive and fall for the emails. Maybe they're less technical. Maybe they don't understand the terms, etc. So we're all different. So now this industry is shifting into a human risk. And the human risk in the context, it's not just, first of all, it's a continuous training, but it's a continuous training and evaluation and testing exercise based on behavior, and based on who you are and what your role is. And what some of these newer systems we start seeing showing up on the market allows you to do is to tune your program towards the people who actually need this program. So you can actually endorse and embrace people who are exhibiting good behavior, and you can do a teachable moments, or you can do a small nimble adjustments to the folks who are not. For example, some of these tools not only just lives in its own ecosystem, but they plugged into other tools. Like, for example, your endpoint detection and response tools, or your email security tools, or your chat, or your Microsoft 365 tenant or Office 365 tenant. So it knows how user responds to the email. First of all, it knows the user role, and you have to define what are critical roles or not. Probably the escrow officer is a critical role for a wire fraud, or maybe IT or security administrator would be a critical role for elevated privileges, etc. So they all will have different attacks, and now you can match and marry these different attacks and different training opportunities for different roles. But again, it looks at other telemetry. It looks how you behave on your system. It looks how you behave on the web. It looks what sites you visiting, what information you're receiving and sending, what you're downloading, and it creates this risk profile and allows the company or a business focus, really on people and folks who needs help. That's basically where the industry is shifting to. Also, there is an old saying: "Never let the good security incident go to waste." So just read the news, read security announcement, read the incidents, and dive into it and find out how the company was breached, and turn it into a teachable moment. And so there are some, so there is a wealth of information where you can actually, and it's factual and it will resonate with the people because they saw it in the news. Yeah, but employee training is a fundamental. This is the first and foremost, focus area for, I think, for any title agent.
Are there any training tools or services out there for title agents that are not the size of Stuart?
Yes, there are a million tools, and by the way, many vendors provide a free or low-cost option. This is probably the most underappreciated industry is the security awareness. There is tons of information available from SANS Institute. They provide it for free. CSA Cybersecurity information security agencies provide some free information. The well-known and the large vendors like KnowBe4 and Cofans provide the free training. You can do a free assessment. Some of them provide a free assessment where you can enter your domain or upload the list of your users, and actually they will send the free phishing emails and will give you results who responded to the phishing email. You can get CBT-based training from many of these companies for free, and you can actually alternate. I mean, you can basically build the security awareness training for free. Not to mention that all of them will allow you to subscribe to a security awareness newsletter. Your employees will get to the inbox anywhere from once a week to once a month to once every couple months. You don't have to enroll everybody. You can just enroll yourself or one person at the company and have them forward to everyone else.
Can you just say those names again? One is SANS, SANS,
SANS. SANS.
Okay, what's the second one?
CISA, it's a CISA.gov.
CISA.gov, okay.
Yes, and the couple of vendors that I can recommend: KnowBe4, KNOWBE4.com, and another one is a Cofans. It's a COFENS. se.com. That used to be Fishme. I think they rebranded their name.
Okay. But thank you. It's going to be very helpful and useful to our audience here. In pursuit of security, there's often a concern about making systems too complex for users. How can title companies balance robust cybersecurity measures with user-friendly operations?
My first recommendation, start slow. If you try to ramp up the train to 120 miles an hour, you're probably not going to get there. Let's take as an example, multi-factor authentication. You can start slow by kind of enabling multi-factor authentication, given all the possible ways. Like, for example, Microsoft will support a phone call where the user will be called, user's preferred phone number will be called. All I have to do is press the star or pound to accept that. It can send an SMS message, it can send an email message, you can use an application, and so on and so forth. So you can start by enabling all of these features and functionalities for multi-factor authentication to get the user start slowly adopting. Once you pass the first phase and you start them adopting, then you start removing the weak, or what we know as a phish resistant, or start implementing phish resistant multi-factor authentication options and remove the weak one. And we'll talk about the weak one. For example, phone call is the weak one because it's prone to what is called MFA bombing. It's a type of attacks when the adversary or bad guys try to make a repetitive. For example, they try to log in, they already stole your credentials somewhere, and they try to log in into your email with those credentials, and they see that email initiates multi-factor authentication. They probably don't know what it is, but every time they try to log in, you receive the phone call. And if you didn't initiate or didn't log in, you probably will say, I'm not going to do anything. But they do it repeatedly. And sometimes they'll do it in the early hours or in the middle of the night or late night or at the end of the day. They're causing the repetitive prompt, causing fatigue, and eventually user will press just for it to go away. And that's all they need. So you start, as you mature in that process, as your users become more accustomed to this type of authentications and get comfortable with it. Because comfortable, that's a key word in our industry. Remember, we're a trade industry, we're not a technology industry. A lot of folks are not comfortable because they don't know how this technology works, they don't understand the technology, they don't understand application, and so on and so forth. Now you're shifting them to a more phish resistant, your application, push your application token, or a FIDO to either USB or a key fob keys. The next one is allowed to opt in. Start slow and say, we'll have an opportunity to do an X, Y, Z. And have people opt in because, somebody will get in and somebody will try it and the rumor will spread around to say, well, it's not as bad as I expected. And that will get an adoption. Where possible, whatever you implement, and give users two options. Give them the option, the most desired option where you want it to be with the highest level security appropriate for whatever it is, whether you implemented security, technology, or you implementing training, etc. But give them the other option and have them choose. And then you can slowly kind of shift and take one option away once they become comfortable, but in the process, entice and reward the people who chose the higher option. I don't know, give them a gift card, give them a Starbucks gift card. Entice them because, again, the rumor will spread around and people will support each other. Try to make it frictionless. There are some technologies, for example, email and web security, they are relatively frictionless. All of this technology intended or designed to be behind the scenes and non-intrusive to users. Now, where there are certain times there are some fallouts and something needs to be whitelisted or blacklisted or adjusted, in over 99% of the cases, it's frictionless. So make sure when you implement the security technology, you look at this, you look how it works behind the scenes seamlessly and not interfering or impeding anything that the user does. And then I guess the password managers, this will be my only recommendation. It's hard. You can start slow. Maybe for privileged account, maybe your title agents or escrow officer is accessing to a title production system. You'll say you're required to have a complex password, and here is a free password manager. Those password managers are not that expensive. So if you pay for password managers for your employees, if you help them to understand how it affects their personal life, if you educate them to say, hey, these passwords are going back to the billions of passwords. These passwords are out there. So if you're using the same password for your bank, for your title production software, for your insurance, or whatever else, you're probably in danger. So here's a tool for you. Start using changed password for your bank, because it's all adaptations. People will get used to it and they'll get on board.
In the unfortunate event of a data breach, what should be the first steps a title company takes to mitigate damage and secure systems?
That's a good question. A couple of years ago, Alta Cybersecurity working group actually created a checklist. Just published on Alta website, and anybody with Alta access can download it. But my answer is it depends. It depends on the size of your company or your business. It depends on the size and the type of incident. It will be different. But the participants in your incident response would be your insurance carrier, whether it's a part of DNO or what I know.
Cyber.
Yes, I apologize. Or whether you have a separate cyber insurance policy, you need to contact, at some point, you need to contact your carrier. But even before you do, in the preparation for the incident, you have to contact your carrier and find out who is on the approved panel or approved list from your carrier, because they will have outside counsels, they will have incident response firms, they will have a forensic firms, they'll have ransom negotiators, etc. They will have a portfolio of panelists or approved vendors that you can use during your incident. That's important to understand it. Like I said, depends on the size and different circumstances. That may not be your first call, but at least you need to understand. Because at the end of the day, some of the expenses will be covered by your insurance carrier, so you need to play by the books. Otherwise, they'll deny your claim. If you don't have an IT or security resources who can help you to live and take you through the incident, you need to make sure you have an IT retainer. You need to make sure you have somebody. This is not IR. We'll get to the IR in a minute. It's an IT, somebody who can help you to log in, or you can't log in to your desktops and laptops. They're encrypted. You can't access to your printer, etc. You need someone who can help you decipher what happens. You need someone who can incident response retainer firm or someone else can walk through and help them kind of triage this incident. And this is actually a key. Our business, our industry, and our business becomes more technical than it used to be 10 to 15 years ago. So we can no longer brush it off and say, well, it's too technical. It's not going to apply to me. It will never happen, because it will. Cybercrime is, I tell it everywhere and to everyone, cybercrime is an opportunistic business. They're not, bad guys are not waking up and say, oh, we're gonna target or we're gonna attack this company today. It's all opportunistic. They'll find an opportunity, they follow the breadcrumbs, and it could be aftermath or artifacts, could be fallout, etc. I'll give you one example. They can go after realtor or after sellers, send a phishing email and compromise the sellers or realtors' email credentials who don't have an MFA. They get into their system, pretend to be them. Now they have exposure and access to a larger transaction. Or to entire transaction and larger audience. Now they know you, and now they know a broker, now they know lender. So they just, in the 5 minutes, by circumventing or stealing the credentials of someone else, they just learn about you. guess what? Now you're a target. Now they're going to send you a phishing email. But they didn't wake up and say, I'm going to send a phishing email to this title agent. You just came as a collateral. So remember that. So you need IT, you need an IR firm. So you need the IR firm for incident response, who can help you with the backup system recovery, who can help you to determine what happens, when it happens, etc. Because unless you know exactly what happens, in our industry, in security, we tell define the patient zero. Until you find the patient zero, you can never unwind what happens to you. If you don't know how this happens to you, you will always be at the risk that will happen to you again, because you don't know how to roll it back, how to fix it. And then, so your IR firm need to be part of this, and then legal and regulatory counsel, whether it's if you're a larger agent and have your own, otherwise the one on retainer or on the panel from your insurance company, you need to understand what your legal obligation and regulatory. This were not in any particular order, but like I said, it will depend on the size and the type of incident. The key point to understand here is your regulatory compliance or regulatory disclosure. A lot of regulations have a very short window to disclose the incident. So as a preparation for incident response, I highly recommend to look at the state where you operate in and understand all of the regulatory requirements in your state. And most importantly, understand what your obligation to regulator for disclosure of security incidents, because the penalty could be very severe.
So most, if not all, title companies, we feel like we have our act together. We do all these precautions to keep our data safe. And how do we mitigate against like the weakest link, which is realtors in a transaction? Lenders have their act together. We have our act together pretty much. Then realtors still using Hotmail, AOL account. And we have an incident happen to us, almost a couple of years ago, with somebody impersonated a realtor. Actually, they hacked the realtor's email and sent us like a wrong payoff. And we sent money to the wrong account. And luckily, we recovered most of it. But I was just, everything was authentic. The right email, everything was correct. How to mitigate against these, the weakest link, which is the real estate agents?
Correct. It's vigilance. You just pay attention. So I can tell you, because I've been in this situation many, many, many times, you just, we know this by heart. Most of the escrow officer, title examiners, etc., most of the folks in our agencies can do it with their eyes closed. They can do it by heart because they've been doing it for many, many, many years. That's actually our Achilles heel. So this is what's killing us, because we're flying on autopilot. We know it's, because remember I said these guys know the 24 to 48 hours window is crucial. We're now moving and collating all of these documents and ready to make sure everything is meeting all of the requirements and we're ready to close. It knows it. This is when they attack in the most vulnerable time. But you'll find the breadcrumbs everywhere. And I can tell you, generative AI is now so there's a lot of speculations, and generative AI, one of the kind of downside of generative AI in our industry, it removes this poor language and punctuations and all of these emails that were typical for phishing emails and easily recognizable. It makes these attacks almost perfect. But to be completely honest with you, if you still relying on this to be an attributes and the parameters, behind the 8 ball. This is why I said there are some security technology who takes it to the next level and actually look at all of the metadata behind the emails. But to answer your question, so if you slow down, we tend to have too many interactions, we have too many emails floating, etc. We always assume the email we reply to is the latest and greatest and correct. But in most of these attacks, if you scroll through the entire chain of the emails, you will find the flaw. You will find where that guy, so granted, or to be fair, if the realtor using Gmail don't have an MFA and using password 123, there's nothing you can do. So if the bad guy impersonated the realtor, and now portraying to be a realtor. This is one attack we have absolutely no defense. But in many cases, I would say over 90% of the cases is they will create the emails at the free domains like Hotmail and Yahoo and Gmail, etc. And they will portray to be someone else. And they will change these or display name. There will be some attributes within that chain that will give a red flags. But unfortunately, that's the only way to combat this, is to just to be careful, go with your guts. If it's suspicious, if it looks to be suspicious, etc., it probably is. There is no silver bullet. I'm sorry, Ma. And we have no influence. And as a matter of fact, we see this a lot where agents will notify us saying, I received this email from somebody portrayed to be from Stewart, and I look at the email, it didn't even come from Stewart. Yeah, but remember, if it didn't come from Stewart, it's not in my ecosystem. It never came through my mail system. So all of my emails defenses are pointless because it never came from my system. It came directly to you, for example, as an agent, from the bad guy who created an account as our escrow officer, slapped all of our logos and all of our signature, fabricated that email, and came to the Gmail servers. Yeah. I mean, honestly, the answer is until all of these free email providers will start cooperating and work together in kind of holistic ecosystem, sharing this threat intelligence and sharing this metadata, we're not going to be able to reach any conclusion.
Wouldn't you, I would think, like, if there is a way to, like in the title transaction, to completely eliminate email and then just communicate through inside the title correction software. Like I'm not gonna name names, but a lot of them have that communication inside. It's encrypted and secure. We try to force people to just communicate through the platform, but sometimes people resist or don't want to use that as a communication piece. But it just, isn't that probably the future? Like you would think, or?
You said the key word. So the key word is frictionless experience. Whatever creates the friction. Remember, our consumers are realtors and the consumers, buyers and sellers. Yeah. That's the one who generate the revenue for us. This is who brings the money. This is who brings the consumer, who brings the money. So anytime you create the friction for either of these categories, this is where kind of your business goes south. Your agent, so if you force the builder, I'm not a builder, the realtor or a builder for that matter, you're working with to use it, I don't know, let's say very secure Dropbox or box or encrypted email, and they don't want you, they'll just take their business away from you. So you're absolutely right. It's, I think it's a future, but it has to be attractive. And I think what will have to change and shift, and I said this earlier, is I think the new generation is more savvy. There is a Gen Z now that they were native born, they're mobile phone born, they know nothing about anything else. So they will be more attuned if you to download the application or receive the text notification or do something on their mobile phone. I think that's our future. As our consumer base and the realtors are kind of aging, the new generation coming in, that's my only hope for shifting this in our luck, because today we're dependent on that.
What are some emerging cybersecurity trends should title companies be aware of? How can they prepare for future challenges?
I think the general generative AI, I mean, jury is out, still out. So I can see a positive side. We start seeing a positive side. It's great today. The co-pilots are great today in the summarizations meeting. You don't no longer have to attend the meeting or record the meeting or send their summary.
Like honor and all this stuff. Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot of saver in the time. I can see the generative AI in improving our workflow and productivity in our business, because remember, it's all about data mining, connecting the data, filling out the form. I see a lot of opportunity where generative AI can make our life easier, but it's also our ecosystem is growing, so our applications become more modern. we're connecting. We want to do more with these applications. We want to share data more. And I think this is where we start losing the track of our data, and that's dangerous.
And how do you since we're talking about AI? We forgot a term, and the voice impersonation and the video impersonation.
Oh, yeah.
It's getting so scary.
Yes.
Like we implemented it's in our leadership team. Like there's the password, like a key phrase. So if somebody impersonates me, like just to, hey, if we don't know the phrase, then it's not me, kind of thing. But can you talk a little more about that, and how can we prepare ourselves against AI?
So voice cloning. I've done some presentations on one close, and I actually subscribe. You'll laugh at this. I subscribe to, I'm not going to mention the vendor, to a voice cloning tool. It costs $5 a month. $5 a month. And so voice cloning has become, remember, when you couple voice cloning with ability to orchestrate or fabricate a caller ID, and then look at the next level, a deep fake, where now it's not just a voice, but it's a visual and everything else. I don't know what the future is. My gut's feeling is we're gonna get to the old world where we have to, for critical transactions, where we'll use the phone communications. I'll walk into each other's office and say, "Did you send this, or do you want it?"
Old school.
There is some technology. I see some emerging technology that looks that start looking at the parameters behind a video or documents, etc., and can detect the signature of this being generated with AI. But I can tell you, looking from a cyber world, like we're all constantly fighting with the bad guys. As soon as we address something, some vulnerability, or as soon as we find a way to mediate some risk, they'll find something else, and we're always behind the 8 ball. This will be a same game. So the minute we determine how to battle this or combat this, they'll find some other ways to do this. There's a lot of talks about now in not in just in our industry, but up on the hills, about requiring the watermarking and requiring identification. That to me, it has a future, because the small bits of information will be embedded into an image, into a document, and everything else that will indicate anything from it being generated by generative AI to copyright protections, etc. So that materialized, but again, this could be one of those blockchain, hit or miss. But yes, the 3-1, and you rightfully took it out of my mouth. It's generative AI, voice cloning, and deepfake. That's an emerging threat.
So it's gonna be an ongoing dance, I guess. As like you create the defensive mechanism, then the bad actors evolve and innovate, and then it's literally back and forth, because it's almost a tennis match.
Correct. You're absolutely right. And as a matter of fact, I do recommend. You rightfully said this. I do recommend to develop the keywords or the phrase that are used in the different transactions. But my gut feeling, they'll circumvent it as well. We're going to get this to red key, a blue key. Remember the 2 key to control nuclear arsenal, where you'll have to have 2 people with 2 different knowledge, 2 different bits and pieces of knowledge to be able to complete something put together and complete. Time will show. I don't have a crystal ball.
So for title agents and companies that may not have extensive IT resources, what would be your top advice to enhance their cybersecurity posture?
If you've never done any of this before, my first recommendation is hire the professional. Find somebody who can come in and do a gap analysis for you, or gap assessment, and tell you where you're at. Maybe you're good. Maybe you just need 10%. Maybe you're at 10% and you need 90%. And then my second advice is get an IT retainer or IT help. Like I said earlier, this is very, very technical. This world becomes very technical, and a lot of small agents just can't afford or don't have a full-time IT. Got to be able to call someone at the
fractional.
And
it doesn't have to be full-time, to be fractional like that.
Correct. Yes, this is fractional. Yeah, that's what the retainer is. You get the fractional. There are multiple ways to do this, but you need to have someone on a retainer, because the minute something happens to you, that's a bad time to start opening Rolodex or Yellow Pages in cold.
Should do you think, like, you know how New York requires the data audit? They're very tough on the cybersecurity and data. Do you think all states should probably adopt that required audit, like a data audit?
That's probably where the industry is going, because we've seen the New York DFS, 500 rule came first, and since then, I think it's 2017 when they first introduced it. I think since then, a lot of other states are adopting. Unfortunately, a lot of states take on their own stance and they try to develop their own standards. I wish they would all come and agree to the standard framework that every state can adopt. But yes, it's very plausible that states will have an audit rights, or will have a clause similar to New York DFS in their requirements, cyber requirements.
So how do you stay up to date with the latest developments, and what resources you recommend to other professionals in the title industry, and besides the publications you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, guess what? ChatGPT and generative AI makes it easier. So Bing now has a co-pilot. Google has a co-pilot. All of the major browsers have a co-pilot. My personal favorite one is a Perplexity. It's perplexity.ai. It's one of the many ChatGPT, and I like Perplexity because it's more natural. So it was developed not the question and answer. It was developed as a researcher tool. So the biggest benefit, I think, of using Perplexity is for every first you can have a conversation with it. It gives you a clues or cues of what potentially additional questions you might want to ask or would be interesting to know easily. But most importantly, because it started as a research tool, it has a citation everywhere. So every answer is supported by a link on the website. So you can just summarize. If that's all you need is just to get the grasp or question answer, that's good. But if you want to dive deeper or see where it came from, it actually has the links to the source, which many of the co-pilots don't do it very effectively.
Awesome.
But again, depends on your technical level of skills. There are a number of subscriptions that you can sign up for. They'll give you this information. But I don't have a general recommendation because your technical level and interest could be different from mine.
That's awesome. We're getting close here to the end of the episode. I have a couple final questions I ask every guest. Do you have a favorite quote?
Favorite quote? Well, my favorite security quote: "I can't protect what I don't see or don't know."
That's awesome. That's perfect. And how about a favorite book that you read recently, or your all-time favorite book?
So I don't have one favorite book. So I've read some books on the leadership. So this is a common question that I get asked, and let me tell you kind of my perspective. So you have to be generalist. So while I have interest in the cybersecurity, and I read a lot of cybersecurity books, this range from anything to different threats, and some of the books are very, very technical. Also in our industry, so you need to be a generalist. So I read leadership books. I read books in history. I read books on government, etc. So I can't say I have a favorite one.
Okay. So, any final words for our audience?
Listen, this is a hard word. So like I said, this is no longer.
It's a war. Wow, that's a strong word. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a technical world, and you can't brush it off anymore. I tell folks it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Title Agents Podcast. I hope you found our conversation with Genady as informative as I did. Cybersecurity is vital for safeguarding your title business, and the insights shared today can help you strengthen your defense. Don't forget to subscribe for more expert interviews and practical tips. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we continue to explore the strategies that keep title professionals at the top of their game. Until next time, stay secure and keep innovating. Thank you, Genady.
Thank you.
In a world where change is the only constant, Choumil stands at the forefront, guiding title professionals to not just grow their businesses, but to master the art of innovation. With every episode, you're handed the keys to unlock unparalleled growth and stay ahead of the curve. Get ready for a transformative journey